So what happened was last summer, I was making a presentation about Donate Life, about organ donation, organ and tissue donation, at our gathering at Fort Williams. It was a Rotary District gathering, and it was a lot of fun. We had bounce houses and kite flying and crafts, and we were making book displays to give away free books for our reading programs, literacy programs, and we had speakers at the same time. Very small crowds because, of course, who wants to go listen to a speaker when you're at gorgeous Fort Williams? So I totally understood that. But our district governor, Andrew, his wife Pam, came and listened to my presentation on being an organ donor. I'm an organ recipient. 8 years ago, I had a liver transplant, and that's we'll talk some about that today, and give you some details about how we as Rotarians can make a difference. Well, after listening to my presentation, Pam came up and said, "Now wait a minute, why aren't we doing this as Rotarians? Why aren't we presenting this?" Because we as Rotarians, we're used to the drill, right? We have a speaker come in, and the speaker talks to us, and they normally don't ask directly because that's kind of against the rules, but we know they want money. They need money, or they need man hours. They need people to help. They share their vision, and that's what we're about, and we love that. Well, here I am today, and I'm not going to ask you for any money. I'm not going to ask you for any man hours. All I'm going to ask you for is your organs. So if you'd give them up now, that would be great. That'll come later. But Andrew said, "Hey, why couldn't we have some fun with this? Why couldn't we challenge all of the clubs in our district to reach 100% of membership being registered organ donors?" And so our goal was to have some fun with that at the April district training, and give away some gifts and recognize clubs and do all that. And of course, COVID hit and changed all of those plans. So here we are on Zoom, still doing it. But when you see that graphic that says 100% possible, donate life, you are the key. I'll start off by a little video that tells my story. May 2nd, 2011. I was running around Animal Kingdom in Florida, having a blast with my wife, going on roller coasters, all that stuff. May 3rd, I was in Florida Hospital. A doctor came in after doing a CAT scan. She said, "Your liver is shrunken up and is basically useless. And without a transplant, immediately, you're gonna die."
When I found out that they didn't know if it was going to need a transplant within 48 hours or however long, I was crushed because I just had no idea what to think or where that put me in my life at that time.
Organ donation, finding an organ donor, is not an easy thing. And so 18 people in the United States every day die waiting for an organ. And that's hard. But then there was this other thing called a living donor. And they told me I could have somebody donate portion of their liver, about half, a little bit more than half, and the liver would grow back in them to 100% within 4 to 6 weeks.
We knew that there was the option of waiting for people who were liver donors who had passed away to have the chance to give on their organs. Well, that's a beautiful thing. We also knew there was the possibility of live liver donors. I remember when we found out that he needed the transplant, just praying, just God, let it be me. And it felt like as soon as I prayed that prayer that he gave me the sense of peace.
Scripture says, "By his stripes we are healed." And I look and I say, by his stripe, I'm healed. To find out more about becoming an organ donor, expressing true love through that, you can easily just register within 5 minutes at organdonor.gov. And man, I would love for you to do that.
I've got friends who are waiting.
Yeah.
So you guys have all seen my belly now. So in order to know each other better, I need to see all your bellies. So let's no. But that is our story. 8 years ago, we just in May had my 8th year liverversary, as those of us in the transplant world call it, in the liver transplant world. But when you hear of somebody needing a liver transplant, there's a stigma attached. What do you often hear? What do you think the reason is? Why do they need a liver transplant? Yeah, disease, but the first stigma is alcohol. You know, that this person drank his liver to being no good, or drug abuse, or different types of abuse. But there are many different causes that end up people need a liver. And one of the leading causes of liver failure is acetaminophen overdose. Acetaminophen is Tylenol. Something as simple as that, where we take too much Tylenol, over 3,000 milligrams a day. Some places, some people are taking 4,000 milligrams, and it's not uncommon for people to go in liver failure because of acetaminophen overdose. Prescription medication abuse. Herbal supplements, that one surprised me. Herbal supplements oftentimes mask the true condition of your organs. Yes, they'll change a blood test, but it's giving a mask, and so they're not medically FDA regulated. And as a matter of fact, I have to call my transplant center anytime I want to take anything herbal or consider adding something that makes claims to my diet. Hepatitis and other viruses. Hepatitis just means liver damage, toxins, autoimmune disease, diseases of the veins in the liver, metabolic disease. Now this one was mine, NASH. For about 15 years of my life, I weighed about 300 to 330 pounds, and was morbidly obese. Well, a certain percentage of us, and especially here in America, where as many as 30% of Americans now have fatty liver, a certain percent, that progresses to scarring. That scarring elevates it to something called NASH, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. And that's what I had every time my liver would swell from this fibrosis, this fatty liver. The surface would crack, break, burst, and then scar, and then shrink again, and then expand and shrink, expand and shrink, to the point where that doctor came in and told me that I needed a liver transplant, and then, of course, liver cancer. And the liver will regenerate, as my son said in that video. So here we were in the hospital, and what do you think happens? You always hear when somebody says you're going to die or your life is about to end. What do we think happens? Most people think your life flashes before your eyes, because that's always what we hear. Your life flashes before your eyes. But I didn't find that to be true. I find it to be my loved ones that flash before my eyes. When that doctor came into my room, she had terrible bedside manner, just terrible. I remember it so well. And as a matter of fact, we refer to her as Dr. Death in my family, even to this day. I remember she came in early morning rounds, and she had something in her hand resembling a clipboard electronic thing. And she said, in a scolding tone, "Mr. Linscott, your liver is shriveled up and useless, and without a transplant immediately, you're going to die. Did you know this?" Well, gee, Thanks, Doc. Is there a better way to maybe break this news to somebody? Well, she said other words after that. I don't know what they were, because of course my mind is jumping to what she has just said. And my loved ones' lives flashed before my eyes. I thought of my daughter. Her wedding was coming up 2 months later. And my first thought was, God, don't let me die and ruin her wedding. Don't let that happen. Let her go on with her wedding. That has to still happen. My thought went to my youngest son, who sometimes reacts angrily to what life throws at us, and I was like, don't let him be bitter. I thought of my wife. We're young. We're under 50 at that point. Will she remarry? Will she find love again? And I bring that up because with organ donation and organ transplant, this affects multiple people. It's not just the person waiting for the transplant. The next day, a different doctor came into my room, and he was in a better mood. We refer to him as Dr. Life. He came in, and he said, Mr. Linscott, how are you doing? And I said, how do you think I'm doing? I'm dying. I don't know what to think. I'm a mess. That doctor yesterday scared me. He said, oh, wait. There's time. There are medications that we have. There are processes that we can take, medical procedures that we can get you on the transplant list and maybe have time. Yes, you need a liver transplant, and without one you will die. But we do have time to get you on that list. He said, I'm sorry she scared you so bad. Sometimes she can be very blunt. And I said, yeah, she really did. And he said, oh, I'm so sorry for that. She's my wife. And so my wife and I, we laugh about that now. We were trying to figure out and picture what their dinner conversations are like at their house. So they stabilized me, sent me back to Maine from Florida so that I could get on the transplant list at Leahy. I spent the next year sinking in health. I spent the next year basically getting more and more sick while waiting for transplant. As a matter of fact, in March of 2012, I was in Maine Medical Center for 26 days out of March, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. As a matter of fact, they had taken me off the transplant list, too sick to survive, and were looking at releasing me to hospice. There was something going on with my blood sodium level. It wouldn't regulate. And I remember that being at that point, that was, my wife admitted later, that was the only time that she actually considered that she might be losing her husband through this, that we might lose this battle. And I remember a nephrologist, a kidney doc, came walking into my room, and he said, Mr. Linscott, I would like to take a look at your kidneys. I said, well, we know it's my liver. He said, yeah, I know. But apparently they had been talking, a group of surgeons and docs, as they were eating lunch or something, and talking about my baffling case with my blood sodium level going crazy and not being able to be regulated. Well, he told me about that and took a look at my kidneys and discovered that my adrenal glands on my kidneys were not working, and their function is to regulate our blood sodium level. So that doctor fought for me to get into a test, a trial medication that was $10,500 a month to be on this medication. He fought my insurance and got me on this medication. And long story short, it changed the course and got me so that I was regulated and back on the transplant list. Well, we came to April, and my son Joshua, who you see pictured here the day of my transplant, my son Joshua started calling Leahy regularly and saying, listen, I know my dad has declined quickly. He's going to die while we're waiting. What do I need to do? I'm a match. What do I need to do? What more? So Josh was getting his PhD in Manhattan at Weill Cornell at that point, and working at Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and working on new drug developments and all of that. And they were so great. They allowed him all the freedom and all the time he needed to be able to save my life. So he flew up, and they did the rest of the tests and spent the whole weekend and got us all set for my transplant. I remember that toward the end of April, and I got a phone call from Josh, and he said, "Dad, what are you doing a week from Monday?" And I said, "I'm just laying here on this couch dying, like still." And he said, "No, we're going to Leahy for our transplant." And we went. Here you see me being wheeled into the operating theater. Do you remember how I said that waiting for an organ transplant affects the whole family? I want you to think for a minute and picture my wife. She was sitting in the waiting room while she's got her son in one operating theater and her husband going into a second one. Her son is... I think Josh was 25 at that point, 24. And here he was. He was an athlete, a runner, a collegiate baseball player all the way through college. I remember joking with him and asking, because he was one of those guys who had rock hard abs, square little boobies. And I asked him, "Hey, when I get your liver, am I going to get some of that too?" Yeah, no. He said, "Dad, that doesn't work that way." And obviously it didn't work that way. But here's my wife sitting there. When Josh gave me part of his liver, he went in totally healthy and came out of the operation on a ventilator temporarily and in the ICU. Such a thing for her to go through, such a thing for our family to go through, but what an amazing chance at life. A second chance at life. So we went through the transplant, and now here I am 8 years later, doing great. The 4 beautiful grandchildren, and so I've had the opportunity to go around and talk to people about organ donation. You see, in the United States today, updated, there are about 124,000 people on the list waiting for organ donations. Their lives depend on it. 94,000 of them or so are waiting for kidneys. Kidneys are the easiest surgery to do, but the toughest organ to match. 81 organ transplants take place in the United States every day. 22 to 24 people die every day waiting for organs, as people are either not registered, afraid to register, or listening to myths that just are not true. And so their organs go into the ground while somebody could have the gift of life. One organ donor can save the lives of 8 people. One tissue donor can can impact countless lives. So what can we do as Rotarians? The first thing is register at registerme.org. Now, you probably are registered with the Department of Motor Vehicles, right? You have a little heart on your license, and that's awesome. Thank you for doing that. But registerme.org is the direct registration link with our United States DonateLife.net. It's a double safe, because sometimes we've found that maybe there's a glitch in the Bureau of Motor Vehicles governmental system listing, or it's not accessible, or maybe somebody doesn't have a license, or maybe somebody forgot to renew it, because it doesn't automatically renew. So I encourage you just to go on. Some people have done it even during my speaking online at Rotary meetings, and at the end they say, "Yeah, I just did it. It took 3 minutes." And that just cuts out the middleman. It's right there. So we can register at registerme.org. The most important part of that registration is tell your family, tell your loved ones, this is my wish. Because every day there are people who want to be organ donors who have passed tragically, and their family is presented with that opportunity, but their family understandably is under such stress that they don't even want one more decision. So they say, I can't even hear that right now. I don't want to do that. And that overrides the wishes of that person who is deceased. So talk to the family. Say, this is a way that we can bring something good out of this terrible situation, and let your family know that that is your wish. So registerme.org. Raise awareness, add Donate Life message to social media. Share your story if organ or tissue donation has impacted your life. Have you ever received a blood donation? I had 8 units during my surgery. So that's what we can do. And I like to close with this when I talk to Rotarians. This is my favorite picture of my transplant process. My favorite picture is a picture of my son-in-law at a bicycling event that we did about 4 months after my transplant. That is crazy. I signed up and registered for a 10-mile bike ride it's called the Not Dead Yet Festival, as a fundraiser to fight cancer. I signed up for it. Why did I sign up for it? Because I'm a Rotarian. I wasn't a Rotarian then, but we Rotarians do things because we believe in setting goals, and most of us are driven. Well, I'm driven too. So I set up this goal of riding in this 10-mile ride. And this picture, I remember going through, we had hundreds of riders doing the 10-mile ride, and I started off strong and was passing people, and my son-in-law riding with me, encouraging me and being like, look, you don't even have your original parts, and here you are doing this. This is incredible, and he's encouraging me. Well, we came to about mile number 9, and there at Pineland Farms in New Gloucester, Maine, it's very hilly. We came to a long hill that was a dirt road, and I had nothing left. Just nothing at all left. And about halfway up the hill, I was just about to quit. I've done all the self-talk. I just can't go any further. When I felt energy, I felt my bike taking off without me. I felt a push coming, and I looked to my left, and my son-in-law had jumped off his bicycle and grabbed my seat post and was running along beside me, pushing me up the hill. And after he pushed me to the top of the hill, he ran back down, got his bike, caught up with me. We finished dead last, but we finished. And all the people who were there with signs cheering us on, Donate Life, liver transplant 4 months ago, all of that. It was an emotional time, but I put that word push. I used it as pray until something happens, press until something happens, persevere until stuff happens. My charismatic friends said, pray until Scott heals. See, whatever you want it to be, we as Rotarians are people who push. We push to make a difference. We push to make a change. We push to make an impact. And I give you this Chinese proverb to end with. If you want happiness for an hour, take a nap. If you want happiness for a day, go fishing. If you want happiness for a year, inherit a fortune. But if you want happiness for a lifetime, help somebody. Service above self is what we're about as Rotarians. I hope you guys will take the time to go to registerme.org and register to be an organ and tissue donor. Do you guys have any questions?